All right, now what I need to do is to finish the story and say a few words about that story. So the center of this story lies in the difference between Faithful John, who is a part of you also, and the boss or the CEO in your personality, whom it's very important to admire. And if you get a hold of people who say that you should dissolve your ego, be careful. Because without knowing it, they're telling you to dissolve the CEO. And then you're ready for fascism or any damn thing. So an interesting detail is that when Faithful John is on the ship and he goes on top, he hears 3 crows. And those 3 crows represent the old trio of wise ones from the other world. And you remember the crows say, well, even if he gets there, it ain't going to work. It's this white horse is going to come, and then they're going to take him up in the sky, and it ain't going to be good. And the second crow says, what can you do about that? And the third crow says, somebody's got to stab the white horse, that's the only thing. But if he stabs that horse and then he says why he did it, then he's going to turn to stone from his knees down to his toes. So we watched that whole process go through yesterday, and we watched the white horse start to get ready to ascend, and and was stabbed, and then Faithful John gets in trouble again by burning the vest. We'll talk about what those could be in a few minutes. And then, what's the third one? That's the one you usually remember well. And we'll talk about that in a minute too. But what happened is that at the last minute when he was put on the gallows, then it was the time, and either he told the truth or this was his last time. Faithful John decided to say what had happened. And remember, he said, I'll be faithful even at the cost of my life. So he told that, and he told exactly what had happened. And it's interesting, it says in the story, before he had even finished, a terrible cry came out of the king, no! But it was too late. He was already stone here, and it was finished. So it emphasizes in there that both the man and the wife grieve tremendously when this has happened. They grieve a tremendous amount, just as you grieve when you realize you lost 20 years to addiction. Just as you grieve. And one of the reasons to go to AA is to help you grieve with that. And all of us have gone through these situations, and I feel a lot of grief. I'm going over my poems now to do a selected poems. I feel a lot of grief because I can see exactly those places where that took place, when I went up ladder, or I took on the vest. And so I'm in a lot of grieving from that point of view right now. So what happened then? So they take the statue and they bring it home. They put it in the bedroom. That's good. It's also a very scary idea. But we all go to sleep every night. You may not go into the living room for 2 or 3 days. That's possible. If you're a man, you might not go into the kitchen, as your wife often observes. So probably the bedroom is the best place. The question is, would you say that 90% of the men in the country have their Faithful John in concrete form now? Probably. So we can grieve over that, and we could say that if I had lived in Martine's village, I wouldn't have that. Maybe that's true, maybe not. But anyway, it's happened with us. How does it get turned back again? It doesn't for a while. Story says that they lived this way as best they could, with this grief between them of a combined stupidity. Every day when they went to bed and woke up, they saw it standing right in their bedrooms. A good thing to do. They had 2 children, by the way. Very beautiful little children. Very loved those children a lot. 1 year went by, 2 years went by, 3 years went by. And one day, when the wife was at church, that would be a detail added after the Christian church came. This story is very old, but it's the same point of view anyway, as Marie-Louise Bonfant says. Women have a natural religious attitude. They're often at church, no matter what, whether it's pagan or Christian. 95% of the people in the Catholic churches in Ireland now are women. One day when he's away to church, when she's gone to church, the husband, the king, turns to the statue and weeps and says, "What could I do? What could I do to bring you back to life?" That's a good idea. Statue speaks and says, "To bring me back to life, you have to sacrifice what is dearest to you." That hits him, and he knows it's the children. He knows it's the children. Of course it's the children. What would you do? What he does is, he brings out the two children and he cuts their throats. He cuts off the heads. And he takes the blood and he puts it on the statue. And immediately the statue comes to life. And the statue says, "Wow, wow, wow, wow." And the statue takes some of the blood from its own body where it has been put on, and he puts the heads on the children and puts them back like that, and boom! There's hardly even a mark on the neck where it was separated. So please don't be literal here now. I could see you becoming literal. So that was his risk, was it? That was his risk. And he didn't know when he did it if it would turn out all right or not. Is that right? He didn't know, but he did it. It's a little late to trust faithful John and what he says, but it's better than trying to do it after you die. How about the wife? How are you going to handle this? He puts the two children in the cupboard. And she comes home. And he says to her, "While you were gone, I spoke to faithful John. And John said that we would have to sacrifice the thing most dear to us. Isn't that the children? What would you do?" And she says, "I think nothing is more important than what we're trying to do. So I would agree. I would agree. I would agree." That's a deep woman. And immediately he goes to the cupboard and he lets the children out and they come running out and playing. So she didn't have to do it. The man does it. But she had the opportunity to decide and decided yes. So that's the way that went. The children were great. And they lived together then. There was no longer a husband and wife and two children. There was a husband and wife and two children and faithful John. So, how should we end this story? In the same way that these stories are ended. When everyone knew that, they had a party. They had a celebration, didn't they? People came from 50, 60 miles away. Norwegian fiddlers came. Swedish therapists. Danish butter eaters. And German musicians came. And they had this party for 3 days. And you know, the children danced at that party, didn't they? All the teachers were there. We were invited as storytellers and general wise types. And actually what happened is that they gave us a fantastic bottle of Black Bush Irish whiskey, which we brought back with us. It was 150 years old. And we brought it back with us so you could each have a drink of it. But you know what happened? We were taking it out of the car and it fell out and it broke on the cement. And so that was that. And I don't think we'll ever have whiskey like that again in this world. So, the story is told that way at the end, so that neither the CEO of the Storyteller nor the CEO of INU would imagine that we have received anything from this story, the Storyteller. So the Storyteller has to say, I want you to understand that even though I've told this marvelous story, I'm still the same jerk I always was. And the way they say that is something like, we've all had this wonderful wine, but now I'm back and I'm just blowing wind through my teeth as usual. Or everyone else has drunk all this wine, but I'm back to drinking cold water without even a filter. So, and if the Storyteller didn't say that, he'd be in trouble.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's just, we have 10 minutes and let's just say a few things because I want you to think about this story. And I want you to take it home with you and think about it. And the whole questions of when, how it happened that yours got frozen is another question. But let's just say, let's go back to the horse. What is the horse? The horse, among other things, immediately implies something bodily. Is that right? Even sexual. So all of these images have many possibilities, and you can look at it in your own life. But if you're thinking about teachers here and teachers, people who have, one of the temptation always for the teachers is to sleep with the female students. That's like taking the horse and going up into the sky. Why is that connection there? Not exactly because you're following your sexual energy. That's not the issue. The issue is if the guru, who is a Muslim or Tibetan or whatever it is sleeping with his female students, he's separating himself from the rest of the community. Isn't that right? It's got to be done secretly. And then, and you know how many great groups have been destroyed by this indiscriminate stuff. So there's a sacrifice there. There's a sacrifice there. Is that right? When the women are calling you, they want a spiritual thing, they're calling you, and dozens of them are calling you, and all the teachers know. So that's one way to look at it. An isolation that happens. So, what else can we say about this white horse? Who wants to talk about that? We know how it's also going up into inflation. Of course, that's true too. Anyone else want to come in on the white horse? Power. Power, the horse of power. Mm-hmm. What is emphasized here is that it's white, so it seems good. And secondly, that it is power. And so thirdly, that it leads you away from the community. Leads you away from the community, where you're solitary and alone.
Interesting that the community has offered you its finest specimen of that. Mm-hmm. And so what do you do with it?
About greedy materialism.
Well, I don't think there's any reason to rule that out. When you say, how does the one get frozen? Then you say in a capitalist country, the CEO of a big corporation has already chosen, what, $400,000 salary? While the workers are getting $9 an hour? What does that sound like to you?
More like 4 million.
4 million, right. What does that feel like? So there's something in this global capitalism that encourages all of the CEOs to ride off on a white horse and get entirely separated from their community, so that when you close down a factory in your own town in northern New York, you think nothing of sending it down to Mexico. And you don't realize how much violence, domestic violence, is going to be caused when that factory closes in upstate New York. Yeah.
The horse being white reminded me of the word innocence, which reminded me of how close evil always is to that.
That's good. Very good. All right, and let's take the vest. This is a gift to the community. Well, how would you deal with that? What does the community want to give you?
Maybe there's something in the best about saying, "Oh yeah, I am that great.
Yeah.
I do deserve all this." I'm taking it.
There's always that mixed thing. They want to admire you and then they want to kill you.
Yeah.
And those are very close together.
Yeah.
And it's totally unconscious of the community doesn't even know what it's doing. I mean, that's what happened to the community in the San Francisco Zen community. Do you remember that? Baker Roshi was there, and he was making a lot of money because he knew how to talk to rich people in New York, and he gave away $10,000 worth of books every year, which was very sensible because you got a lot more out of it. And then he slept with this one woman twice. Just twice. It was really kind of brief, too. I talked to him. And everyone went totally nuts. They had this huge thing in which, he gave away $10,000, he's wasting all his money, and he said, they told us to give up power and sex, and I don't know what the third one was, and he said he got all of them, we gave it up. Well, anyway, so I was with him one time when they told him he had to resign, and I was with him one time, we were in Sweden, in Switzerland, and we went to see the Dalai Lama. And so he told the Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama says, don't resign. This thing happens all the time. Just forget it. Just go on. Don't resign. But he went back to San Francisco, and I said to him, for Christ's sake, don't resign. But anyway, I went back to San Francisco, and they said they couldn't kick him out because he was in a straight line down from Buddha. It had been done by Baker, by Roshi, and it had been done. And they said to him, we're very upset here, so I think the best thing for you to do would be to resign tonight, and we'll reappoint you tomorrow morning. He was a naive American. He wasn't a Tibetan. They said, we'll reappoint you at 7 o'clock in the morning, because they couldn't kick him out. He had to leave himself. He said, okay. 8 o'clock in the morning, they said, we changed our mind. He lost all that work he had done for 15, 20 years. He's got a small little thing now in Santa Fe, and so on and so on. That's the vest. Did you see the vest? Did you see them put the vest on him? And it burned right down through the bones and flesh and everything. So Martin knows a lot about that in relation to his own village and everything. I heard him say the other day, I don't want to be a leader because I've seen leaders stoned to death.
Yeah. The guy that I took his place.
Stoned. In front of him.
He wasn't stoned to death, but.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway. All right, so then what are you going to do about the third one, the poison in the breast? Now, I made a remark the other day about when we are with a woman, we'll find out that she does have poison in her breast, which wasn't apparent during the wedding. But didn't Tara say what do the women deal with? Consistent disempowerment? Consistent. Without even grandiose sparks up and down often. So don't be surprised at that. At the same time, don't let's stay at that level. This is not about your wife. This is about the possibility that the great goddess, the one on the wall, the great goddess that women have worshipped and men have worshipped for 100,000 years, that goddess has been ignored now totally by Protestantism and by Catholicism, having only the Virgin Mary without the Kali part. Without the Kali part, Virgin Mary is always compassionate. And Kali is angry about that. She may be angry enough to take 100,000 men in one day in the First World War. How about the Second World War? The Second World War was engendered by England against Germany. At the moment that Germany got the biggest steel population, produce, and people in Germany, people in England, a lot of Masonic people said, this is end. We're going to end this. We're going to finish this for Germany. We're going to finish it. And this occult history of the war is very interesting. And it didn't last 6 months. Why not? I think Kali got to taste it. Kali got to taste it. Oh, this is good, this blood. Very good. A lot of German blood, a lot of French blood. Now the Americans are going to come in with their blood. Very good. I don't know. Want to scare yourself? Anyway, the issue is that there is a divine being up on the wall there that we all fall in love with, and in the divine world, she is angry. Yeah. She has drops of poison in her breast. How do you think she feels now that the earth is dying? Because we mentioned there's a way you can look at this one. There's a ordinary woman you fall in love with in grade school, and that's one level. And the second one is a femininity that's in yourself and everywhere. And the third one is Sophia, the great goddess of wisdom. And then what's the fourth one? The possibility that the universe is itself female. The earth is itself female. And that one is really angry.
Life-giving, life-giving, life-giving. The universe creates.
But you see, it's a very scary idea, the possibility that the universe is in fact feminine. And that's what the ocean is like. That's why there's an ocean there. So.
And then too, the original conception, the earth was the great mother of the whole earth, and then that split into the three aspects. The young virgin,
yes,
beautiful,
indeed,
life-giving Madonna, and the old crone who slits her throat at the end.
Yeah.
And you can't take one of those three women without the other two.
Yeah. And by the way, when he's talking about alchemy, believing the inner world and the outer world is the same. When you look at those alchemists, they always have a young female helper standing right there. And it doesn't work without the female helper standing there. They are worshippers of Sophia. They are worshippers of this divine wisdom and knowledge and insane and crazy stuff. And when that goes back to chemistry, then we're in a lot of trouble. So let's just say that we ought to be frightened. And Robert Moore has said that very clearly. We ought to be really frightened here. And the more frightened we are, the more pop music there is. You notice how even the Minneapolis Tribune, for example, is having nothing now but celebrity stuff. It's got 3 or 4 celebrity columns. It's happening all over the culture. Yeah, that's right. All right, so let's just take a couple of minutes here. And the question of, we're back to Robert Moore now. Something this serious has got to be a sacrifice. And then we got to go and make sure we're not in the literal level anymore. Are you okay? We're not with your wife. We are not with your children. You're not asked to sacrifice your children. What are you going to do with this children image that needs to be sacrificed?
What we love the most. Somebody's most important to us.
What do we love the most? Ourselves.
Things we've done that we think are perfect.
He says we got to put God first before our children, and we'd have to put God first above the things we love the most. which is also saying that you never begin a poem without appealing to praising God. You never begin any work without praising God. You never do anything without praising God. Yes?
You also need to grow up.
Yep. You know, the children are close to childishness. And if there's anything that needs to be sacrificed in this country, it is the childishness. It's the childishness of the whole culture, watching insane movies in which people get killed and then come back immediately, video games. I mean, it's unbelievably childish. You can't shoot people full of holes and they're going to jump back up again. It's insane. It's totally childish insanity. And so that's the only way it says that this statue of yours, there's one inside of you that knows more than you know, can ever come back to life. That is, if you can kill your childishness. And then remember that wonderful boy last night who was 19 years old and did this poem? And at the end he said, "How come I feel so hollow?" That is so wonderful, so brave. And yet the secret was almost in the first thing he said. I pursue women, and yet when I catch them, I don't want them. How do you think the girls feel about that? They're more mature than the boys. So therefore, there's something here that is never encouraged. Well, I don't know what. We can't feel superior because we all do this. But still, the childishness is right there somewhere. And the intimacy means that you fight with your wife, right? Fight with your wife. That's what intimacy means. And well, I'm raving. Anyone want to say anything else?
I think there's something there too about our children being our works, and if our works are not dedicated to something larger than ourselves, if they're only for us, if they're only our children, that's got to be sacrificed.
Yeah.
If they're not dedicated to unfreezing our faithfulness.
Robert, let me just add one thing. This whole issue, these images in tradition, these images in spiritual traditions about sacrificing children, Abraham and Isaac and so forth. There are a lot of folks that are very rightfully concerned about creating an idea of an abusing God, and there's this important book that's come out recently called Facing the Abusing God. And it's very important that we make clear what Robert's getting at here. It's like there are a lot of people that don't have a way to interpret this, that is, these images that are not an abusing God or an abusing father. What we got to see this in the context of is the whole issue of idolatry and what happens when a child becomes God or goddess to the father. Because, folks, this is not good for the child. This kills the life of the child. I was the God for my mother. And it's been a horrible attempt in my life. I have paid so dearly to try to come out of the prison that my deification by her, God rest her soul, her deification of me was an incredible prison that almost snuffed me out. And one night I was weeping with my first wife because I knew it was all over. And I heard myself saying, "That woman killed me." I didn't even know what I was saying. That woman killed me. And what it was she made me into a little phony little god. And it almost destroyed me. It certainly destroyed my first marriage. And so I think with this to keep in mind, when you offer a child, it doesn't mean you won't have the child. It means you can really have the child. Just like your creativity. If you offer your creativity, then you can really have it, because if you don't offer it, it will either kill you or other people.
I think we'll go on. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Robert.